Right.
Hi, everybody. Thank you for popping in and joining us. I'm happy today to be talking to Kevin Westbrook, and he is from English Language Services. So we'll get the business details slightly further down in this call. Hi, Kevin.
Hi, Ruth. How are you?
Pretty good, thanks. It is chilly in Scotland, I have to say.
I was going to say, what's it like up there? It's not bad
Yeah,
down here. Yeah,
yeah.
the sunny south. We're
I
about as
mean,
far apart as we can get, really.
I think our first conversation we had as a LinkedIn message was me moaning about the. Oh no,
Yes.
you were saying it was warm in Scotland and cold. So
That's
yeah,
right. It was. It was. Yes,
yeah,
it was. Yeah.
unusually, but
Yeah.
you've gone into spring and we're still midwinter up
Oh,
here.
yeah. I can see the daffodils out in front of my kitchen now. Yeah.
I can see the snowmen out. I can't, but it's not far off it, and it feels like it.
Mhm.
Anyway, so we are meeting up like this. We don't have as yet a working relationship in that I know lots about you and you know lots about me. So the purpose of this is really to have this conversation in a public way, so that people who are wanting to learn English as a second language, particularly online, have a point of reference for the different online possibilities, the different tutors, coaches, teachers that there are, and not to confuse them with choice, but obviously to show them that there's really something for everyone. This is why I am so excited about online English teaching. It's a buyer's market, really. You can if you're looking for an English language course, you can find exactly what you're looking for now. There's no more language schools telling you where to be, to study. It's for you. But with that, obviously, takes a little bit of information about what you're looking for. And I think it's tricky for learners to actually know this. Is that
I
something
agree.
you would agree? Yeah.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think it's so difficult to, how do you know what question to ask, let alone anything else?
Yeah. So, in the interest of transparency and just helping this project, like the process of choosing an English language teacher, we're doing what I am calling the online English teacher feature.
Which I love.
It's basically I'm featuring you in your work and I'm interviewing you about let's just see. So, so you work online at the moment. Is this?
Yeah, I mean, I'll work wherever is sort of convenient at the time. But I mean, online is obviously, especially a place for like individuals and that kind of thing who can hook up very easily. And I've been using Moodle since I think 3 years after it came out. So I'm very comfortable online, and it's something I've been involved with for many years.
I was going to ask how long you had been teaching online. Were you doing it before the pandemic, or?
Oh yeah. I mean, I can never remember quite the dates, but I think I installed my first Moodle system in about 1999.
Oh wow!
Something like that. It may have been a bit later.
Yeah,
I get lost, but
yeah.
I mean, a long time ago.
Right.
And
Okay. And then you're obviously the advantage for you is that you can reach different markets. You can work with people around the world.
yeah, I'm working with some Chinese customers at the moment, for example, and yeah, we had between China and Mexico, really. I've had customers, and obviously there are time issues sometimes. The Chinese are 8 hours ahead of us at the moment, so it tends to take you a morning rather than anything else. But yeah, apart from time zone things, it's just mega convenient.
Okay, and then you mentioned a platform, Moodle. That's not one that I'm familiar with. So can you just describe how?
Right, I mean, Moodle is a VLE, LMS, whatever you want to call it, so virtual language environment or learning management system. People might have heard of Blackboard, which is one that's used by the universities a lot, or used to be a lot more. It's basically an online, I mean, it feels like you're in a website, But within that website, you have to log into it to get on the courses. So you're safe within your own course. You can't have outsiders popping in and spoiling things. And then it's got everything like, you can. A lot of people would just use it as a material depository. They'll just say, right, okay, you can pick up this or that there, but there's forums, you can put quizzes and self-marking quizzes, you can upload videos linked to things, so you can basically design your course on Moodle and then deliver it through Moodle.
Okay, so people that sign up for an online English class with you, they're not just getting conversation practice or group practice, they're getting access to many more resources.
Exactly. Yeah. If they want that, then obviously that's what they get. I did have an Italian chap who had moved over here, who all he wanted to do was learn to speaking and listening, and that's fine. We did that, but no, I think compared to, and I'm not criticizing anybody, but compared to probably very many sort of freelance providers, I have got this resource that means that they can have access to the materials as and when they like. They can do self-paced learning within a safe environment with the materials that I've curated, if you like, and I think that's a nice thing. It doesn't have to be like that, but it can be.
Yeah, it's a huge selling point for the right people. Like,
Yeah.
there's you're right to say it's not everybody that wants to learn like that, and that's something that as an English language learner you kind of need to ask yourself when you hear a statement like this. Do you feel a thrill and excitement of all those online courses and this way of like this access to bank of resources, or is that something that's kind of the opposite of the way that you like to learn, and you need more hand-holding and assistance and kind of contact hours? It's right, it's absolutely not for everyone, but like, I'm a great believer that we, as long as we're public about what we're doing, we'll attract the right people to us, because
the market's big enough, isn't it?
The market is huge. There's niches within niches within niches now.
Exactly.
Absolutely. So do you work in groups with individuals or a mixture of both?
Whatever. Obviously, the one thing I like about groups is, there are limitations to one-to-one, aren't there? There are things you can't do, like form groups. Just speaking with a native speaker English teacher is not always, in my opinion, the best way to learn all the time. So I very much promote small groups. I don't, you don't want too many, but it makes it cheaper for the per head. I'm not gonna need to charge as much per head for say 6 people as I am for one person. But it enables you to do so much more, and peer feedback and all that kind of thing, and then everyone learns. So I one-to-one's fine. Happy to do that, but I do actually think it's more beneficial for each person to be learning in a group.
It's interesting that you say that, because I think this is one of the misconceptions that many learners have, that one-to-one is better. Like one-to-one will give them better progress than like for the hours that they spend, and it really boils down to how the group is managed.
Yes, that was the thought that was exactly going through my head as you said it. Yeah, that a good teacher should be able to manage a group below a certain level, such that everyone benefits, and that is a greater benefit in the group than there is if it was done individually. Absolutely.
Yeah, and that the personal talk time is really important. So if you feel like, but you can be with a bad teacher and listening to your teacher monologuing and not getting much talk time either. So it's really about the more you practice, the better you will get, as long as there's like a certain level of error correction or targeted language being practiced with that. But what size of groups what would you say was too big to be useful?
I mean, for me, the magic number is 12. Actually,
Okay.
just because it's so flexible.
Hmm.
You've got 1 12, 2 6s, 3 4s, 4 3s, and 6 2s. You can set up your group sizes to really match the activity.
Hmm.
But I think I mean, I've had not doing it personally, working for other organisations. I've had over 30 in a group, and that was too much.
See,
Not
I've
big. Yeah, go on.
yeah. Yeah, I mean, I've taught classrooms of that size, but
Mm,
I can't imagine teaching online in that
no,
size and keeping everybody's attention well.
you
Just
can't pay
comments here from Cassia. Hi, Cassia. Thanks for joining us. And she's just adding in that the problem with group is management, as we've just said. Oh, and oh, Cassie, I love it. Thank you. That's lovely to have you here joining us. And as you can see, I do have access to comments here. So if anybody else does want to pop in a comment or ask a
Yeah,
question to
please
Kevin.
do. Yeah, I mean that would be ideal. Yeah,
Mm,
but I think the thing with I'm also a Taekwondo coach, and
that's a little different, or
yeah, a little, yeah, it is, yeah, and trying to do that over the lockdown period via Zoom
Mhm,
or
mhm,
whatever, I think really did bring home how difficult it is to focus on individuals on a screen. I can do it in a hall.
mhm,
I'll spot someone over there doing something that they shouldn't be doing, or doing something technically incorrect, say,
mhm,
uh, in a live. But with all these little pictures on the screen, you don't have that overview, so you can't. You really paying attention to people is much harder. And hearing things, as a teacher, you
mhm.
pick up on things, don't you, that are happening in the classroom,
I
and
mean,
that's difficult online.
I think with Zoom and other platforms, we have all developed abilities to kind of skip the boring stuff as well. Like, I mean, if there's one thing that the last 3 years has taught us is how to be like kind of ahead in front of a Zoom screen and doing something else at the same time. This is where I
Yes.
should lift up my bowl of cereal or hold on.
Yes.
But like, I mean, we can pretend to be present, but that doesn't serve us very well. And for English language learners,
Mm.
um, again, that's the sort of question that you need to ask yourself is if you are kind of good at learning independently and showing up and motivating yourself, or and I'm not saying it's negative if you're somebody that needs extra help
Yeah.
getting through the steps and processes because they're two different teaching styles. Because
Yeah.
it sounds like um, you trust your students to be active in the groups and they're signing up. There may be, I know you specialize in English for academic purposes, so they've got a really clear goal. They know what
Yeah.
they want to achieve.
Mhm.
They're already motivated. Um, Sometimes as English language teachers, we work with people who don't actually have that goal. They're learning for somebody else or for something else, and
Mhm.
they resent it.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Yeah, we've all had them, and um, it's then. I mean, that's a much harder job. To make it good for them.
Yeah.
That's the thing. I mean, anyone can teach at people, but to actually even make those people that you described feel like they're achieving something and having a good time while they're
Mhm,
learning English. Now,
mhm.
that's a really good goal, for a language teacher,
Yeah.
and that's what you want, isn't it? But it's
Yeah,
very
I mean,
difficult.
yeah, I mean, I would say that's one of my strengths as a English language teacher, definitely. I can get people talking and into what they're doing, and I keep subjects interesting, whereas
Yeah.
your strengths definitely your linguistic background, your, language training,
Hmm.
you have a level of knowledge of the construction of the English language that, allows you to teach in a very different way.
Yeah, yeah. Well, you would know that better than me. But also, I think starting my career in Austria
Mhm,
helped with that. I
mhm,
think being in that. I mean, not. I kind of tend to assume that everybody teaches in a foreign country, but of course they don't. A lot of them are teaching in an English speaking environment. But Austria and Germany have got very good language learning uh, in their normal schooling. And and you needed to have that knowledge well before I did my master's.
Mhm.
You needed to have that knowledge. Otherwise, you looked a little bit silly. Sort of like you could have kids telling you about how your language works, and well, I took it. It was incumbent on me to actually make sure that I was better than them in terms of
Wow.
my sort of meta knowledge, rather
Mhm.
than obviously I knew what was right, what was wrong. But like
Mhm.
many people, I fell into teaching. So I wasn't trained at the beginning.
Yeah, yeah, and, I mean, if you can't answer the question, like, "Why?" then,
Yeah,
you probably shouldn't be doing it. I mean, there's this is I mean, you mentioned the term native English teacher, which, I mean, it is the elephant in the room at the moment in terms of, um, people, I mean, in its worst, it's a racist term, but
yeah,
it's also something that people use to kind of show that they have some superior knowledge of English
yes,
language. I've
yes.
met native English speakers that don't know what a verb is.
No, no, no.
And like, it's very hard to teach a language, just because you speak it
Yeah,
doesn't qualify you for it.
not at
So
all.
again, this would be like if we're giving advice, to people who are looking for online English coaches, English teachers, I mean, avoid anybody who leads with "I'm a native English teacher,"
Yeah,
because if that's all they've got, it's
yeah.
terrible.
Then probably you should look elsewhere. Yes.
Handy, but it doesn't.
Mm.
It really certainly doesn't exclude anybody who's not a native English speaker being able to teach you well. I think
Oh,
that's
absolutely.
important
Yeah.
to clarify.
And I've met lots of them, and they often, like I said about the meta knowledge, they have the meta knowledge because they learnt it consciously, most of them. And
Yeah.
in the same way as I learnt German consciously, that I've got a level of like grammar knowledge that some Germans don't have, and
Wow.
I can teach them the sort of the comma placement rules because they just know it, but they can't
Mhm.
explain it,
Yeah.
and I'm very much, I've always been into development, professional development in a big way, and I did my first sort of teacher training course in 2000, and I think one of those, the opposite question to ask is, okay, what do you have? What have you done? What have you, what have you done to make yourself into a professional? What qualifications do you have? CELTA's fine, but it's a bit like the driving test, isn't it? It probably means you won't do too much harm in the classroom or on the road in the case. But you've got to develop beyond that, haven't you?
Yeah, yeah. I knew somebody who said that after your driving test, you had to drive another 5,000 miles before you could consider yourself a driver, and there's
Absolutely.
a lot of sense to it. And yeah, we have this comment from Cassia as well. Exactly, that's
Yeah.
what CELTA can't teach you. You need a proper training, and yeah, and like training within yeah, training with students and also with people mentoring your progress and improving your skills and people that can show you your errors and ways to improve, definitely. Which like I cut my teeth on English teaching in a big language school,
Right.
and like I kind of got the training on the job in a way. In my very first language teaching job, I was the person that couldn't explain.
Most
But
people have been there. Yeah.
yeah, but I really like it did two things for me. One, it made me deeply embarrassed, but two, it
Hmm.
really unlocked a curiosity in the
Yeah.
language,
Mm.
which like I am so very grateful for. Very,
Actually,
very
I should rephrase what I said. Most native speaker language teachers have been there.
yeah.
Most non-natives
No.
knew it already.
I
It's,
know.
yeah, you know.
Yeah, yeah. And you mentioned speaking another language or learning German.
Yeah,
So
yeah. No, I do German translation as well. So, and that's one of the reasons why my sort of English for specific purposes, I think knowledge, I think is quite high in general. I'm a technical translator, so I translate like handbooks and computer software and that kind of thing. There's like the thing you see on the screen, and things can come in with all. I'm in the middle of a big job on a German company who makes smart home equipment, so things like close your blinds and switch your lights on and control your central heating and all that kind of thing. I've done navigation systems for tunneling machines. I've done sort of soldering of technical soldering for printed circuit boards. So this massive range of stuff.
It's
And
safe to say that at this point, like we both are in the field of English for specific purposes. Like this is our kind of broad niche, I suppose. But it's hard to think of somebody more opposite.
It is. It just shows how big the field is.
The field is huge, you know. I'm doing English for specific purposes, for arts, for creatives, for getting people talking. Whereas like you're really like, I mean, it's important. Precision's important in a sense in what I do too, but like not in a spending
very technical,
the right word for a manual sort of way. And oh my God, I couldn't stand that. Hats off to you for doing it.
Now, I actually had a situation where I was using a glossary for a translation, and the person who had prepared the glossary had translated a German word which meant insulate a wire, but they put it in the glossary as uninsulate the wire. On a 400 on a 400 volt machine, you were
able to spot that.
But that could have killed someone.
I
mean, basically, so yes, we're in very different fields, but equally,
I think I rarely managed to kill people or not kill people with
most unlikely, but I couldn't do what you do. And that's kind of what this conversation's about, isn't it?
One round in a circle, just to say, like, it's no longer what English teachers it's no longer English teachers going, I can teach everybody
exactly.
Come to my English class, and it's about going, what do you like, what are your objectives for learning English? And Cassia's popping off, love. Let's just have a look here, do that. Oh, excuse me, she's popping off. Thanks for joining us. It's lovely to have.
Thank you, Cassia.
Yeah, brilliant. So just to show the absolute wealth of things, people who are looking for English classes might not know this term, English for specific purposes. It's sort of what it says on the tin, but can we go into details?
I mean, it is actually really difficult. I mean, I'm actually trying to do a PhD on assessment for English for specific purposes, and one of the first problems was, what is English for specific purposes? And you could almost define everything as English for specific purposes, because most people are learning English for a reason, and that could be their specific purpose, but that's not very helpful, is it? So I mean, I started using the term workplace English, or workplace language, really, and I think that's much more helpful for what I'm trying to do. I think that's where I sit, really, is I've found out over the years that I can get into people's working lives and understand what they're about. Part of that is just that I'm getting on, and I've seen a lot of sort of businesses and so on, but I can do that, and I think that they find that really helpful. You can then really start teaching them what they need, rather than what I've got.
I mean, a workplace, a workplace could be anything: a hospital, a factory floor, and you just, whatever is needed by that person, you adapt your language to that.
Which is basically what we should be doing all the time anyway. It's a needs analysis, and then provide what that person needs.
I guess. We should be, to a point, but one of the problems in being an English language teacher is the vast amount of prep work that you would need to do if that's how you were teaching everybody. Whereas the advantage of like kind of niching down and specializing is it's not it's because like your special skills, it's not just about saving me time, which passes on to the student and the learner in terms of price and cost, or it can do, and it should do. But for finding the expert, like for example, if you're going to be working in an hospital environment, I think it would make much more sense to learn English with somebody who can teach English as a second language and has living, working experience of being in a hospital environment. So not only do they know the vocabulary, but they know all the terminology that's going to be around you, all the conversations, and the sense of tone as well, which will be needed in different
the
situations.
culture and all of that. I mean, I agree with you. But you can hear a but coming, can't you? And this applies to translation as well, funnily enough. I think the problem is finding that person, and not just finding that person, but my personal opinion, and it depends a little bit. Medical is getting on the edge of this idea, legal as well. But I think in most situations that aren't that sort of specialized in the detail, I think you're more likely to find a good English teacher who can adapt to your needs than an ex-doctor who's also a great English teacher. Because I think the most important part of that is the great English teacher. And I also think that's probably the more difficult. I think it's easier for me to start to understand your world than it is for a doctor to become a great English teacher.
Because we're not teaching dummies. We're teaching articulate people who can explain this to us, and that's actually part of the course and the conversation, finding out what they need. So I think there's having it depends how broad and how specific your goal is.
There were discussions could be had around that for sure, and like you say, if you had someone who's got this very, very specific thing to know, then it may be that you would just have to say, I can't do that for you. I don't have that level of knowledge. On the other hand, my wife is actually in the middle of a course for some lecturers in Austria who are medical school lecturers, and so basically practitioners as well. And I mean, I've helped her out with that, and that works fine because it's a different level, So I think that's one of the things we're talking about, professionalism. Really, we haven't said that word yet, but I think we're talking about professionalism, and part of professionalism is saying, no, I can't do that. Not saying, oh yes please. It's saying
I will shoehorn one more person into my course, and then no, absolutely not. Which again, just to reinforce it, is a buyer's market. If you are like, work out what you need to learn with your English language online course, and then there's things that can help you find the right person. So for example, this search term that we've just mentioned, English for specific purposes, I don't think I've met very many English learners who know that's what they're looking for. So as long as we kind of keep this information and other information as well. So there will be, like, if it's vital to be taught by a doctor, there will be someone who can do that for you. But I mean, I said that, but I mean, one of the language schools I worked with, I was working with health agencies, including doctors, nurses, and kind of helping with presentations on health-related subjects. So it's like we have this chameleon ability to adapt and be like the source of English that our clients need in very, very different circumstances. But rather than kind of stretching too far out of our comfort zone, let's do this thing where we pass on clients, we make recommendations. So in the future, if I find somebody that needs workplace English for factory settings or business settings, I will certainly be passing that on to you.
You know someone who can. Yes,
certainly do.
And I think another thing is that actually, even for specific purposes, you talked about the amount of work you need to do in order to provide that service. I very much believe that there's a big core of what we would call functions that are actually applicable over a very large range of workplaces, and
Mhm. Sure.
then all you're doing is putting different language into those functions.
Yeah.
So
Sure.
I think, and then we can usually recognize when something, certainly something that I know I can do from a translation perspective. You
Mm.
can hear something and you can say, I'm not sure that's quite right. Maybe
Mm.
grammatically correct,
Mhm.
but something in the way they've said it or the usage of a certain word or whatever. And again, as a language teacher in that sort of field, I think it's
Mm.
really important that you can see the difference between something that is linguistically perfectly okay, but
Mhm.
probably doesn't work here,
Something.
and then you can question them. And then,
Yeah.
like you said,
Yeah, yeah. I mean, without going too much into the ELT stuff, like, "Will, I'm going to." That's a perfect
yes,
example. How
yes,
many times do we say "will"? Rarely. How many
yeah.
times do we say "going to"? Like 55,000 times a day.
Yeah, exactly. And
It's
try to explain that difference or teach that difference. In fact, I did that last week with my Chinese students, and probably failed miserably
mm,
at the first attempt, but it was only
mm,
a 30-minute section.
mhm,
But absolutely. So I think it's understanding um, the extent to which you've got the skills that this person needs,
mhm,
and the knowledge that, or and the extent to which you can gain any knowledge that you're lacking from your students. And I'm a great believer in using student materials as well.
mm,
Bring
mhm,
your emails, bring your
mm.
reports, bring whatever you're
Yeah.
allowed to bring, and we can look at that and actually give real feedback based upon what they are actually doing.
I mean, that's the most important, isn't it? It's not just language for speaking English, and it's language that they need for speaking English in their fields, in their world, in their communities and culture. And the more personal it is, the more useful it's going to be.
Hmm. I mean,
Genuinely.
I this is a really worthwhile story. I don't know if you know a friend of mine called Neil Bullock, but he teaches aviation English. Again, another fairly high stakes
Mhm.
sort of field, and I think he said he covered someone for someone. Anyway, he was in a situation where these students had been taught by somebody else, and they were like air traffic controllers, and they were there to learn English for their job. And
Mhm.
they explained to him how a previous teacher had done an activity where they had tea with the Queen.
I mean, that happens to me every day.
You were flabbergasted there. Yeah,
Yeah.
and
I mean,
how did that happen?
and people are paying money for that, and
Yeah,
people are using their
yeah,
time, and, like, I mean, everybody's time is so limited.
yeah,
Do you want to learn English that's gonna serve you in your next job interview, or having a conversation with a friend? Or do you want to learn English that's archaic and old-fashioned that will only come in useful if you're meeting a member of the royal family?
yeah, yeah, yeah. No, it's
I
really
s
shocking. You
it's
know,
it's ridiculous.
yeah.
It's I mean, I think so much has changed for the better in ELT, and that I had kind of thought stuff like that had gone by the wayside, and I think int online English teaching is just gonna drive that out and stomp on it and kill it, because people that have experienced that poor content will go elsewhere and find better teachers,
I hope
and
so. I really do.
it's up for kind of like, I don't even think somebody that's teaching that could even catch up really. I think it's too late
No, no. I
for
think
them to
the
catch like,
attitude.
they've missed the fundamental concept. It's not
Yeah.
teaching English language is not indoctrinating somebody on our culture. It's
No,
helping them be themselves in a
if they
second
actually, I mean,
language.
who the hell knows what it's like having tea with the Queen? I mean,
Yeah,
maybe
yeah,
that was their niche. Maybe they have had tea with the Queen, and then they can give English classes on that. But
yeah, yeah,
in practice, that's probably not the case.
yeah, and it's not anything that an air traffic controller needs
No,
to know.
and or their employer was paying for.
Wow, wow,
I mean, that's the other thing. And I'm
yeah.
assuming that you can charge reasonable money for an air traffic controller course.
Well, they
I'm
probably
thinking,
just piped in somebody posh because they thought posh meant good, which is another kind of misnomer in our culture. It just
Yes.
in
Oh,
our
absolutely.
and yeah.
Yeah.
That's probably another conversation. Like,
Yeah.
it's
Yes.
absolutely
Yes.
fabulous getting to know you with this chat. Thank you for my very first online English teacher for my online English teacher feature, which I will say as often as I like.
Yes, I don't blame you. I think it's excellent.
And
You're
just
very welcome.
one last
Yeah.
question. If people want to work with you, where do they find you and how do they get in touch with you? So can you just
I think the
spell out your
easiest way,
name?
right? So I'm Kevin Westbrook,
Mhm.
and my website is PSA, so Papa Sierra Alpha .eu.com. That's a
Right.
nice, easy one, and you'll find contact details on there. You'll find loads of information about all the sorts of things that I can provide. I'm quite pleased with my website, yeah, and then it's a case of talking.
Brilliant. Okay,
Yeah,
so the first step would just to be to contact you and have a wee chat about needs.
absolutely. Yeah,
Perfect. It's good to
yeah.
hear. Okay, so I'm sure we'll speak again in the future, but for now, thank you so much. And thank you everybody who's joining or watching
Thank
on.
you.
If you do have any questions about this content, just put your questions into the comments section and we will get back to you with an answer to your
Absolutely.
questions. All right, brilliant.
Thanks.
Okay,
Thanks, Ruth.
thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye bye.